Hello, this is Sarah Stock, and I'll be talking about the role of decoration in modern architecture. And how this works is decoration can be in several different forms. It can either be intricate and excessive, almost to the point of clutter sometimes, or it could be almost non-existent. And this is to varying purposes, because it could be, a statement being made about the space, or it might simply be a display of aesthetic. And these forms of decoration really affect the mood of a setting, because, for example, if you frequent a space, you might be inclined to, bring familiar objects into it simply because that sort of decoration makes you feel more comfortable with the space. And this is really something that's approached differently from architect to architect. And the first one I'd like to talk to you about is Victor Horta, who is most well known for his townhouses in Brussels. And he worked in the Art Nouveau style, which used industrial materials to his advantage to create organic forms. And it's kind of a startling switch from the neoclassicism that he worked with prior to this, because he was involved with a neoclassicist architect before he really branched out on his own into the Art Nouveau movement with Hotel Tassel, which was kind of the beginning of his career in the Art Nouveau. The exterior of Hotel Tassel is relatively bland compared to the inside, and its facade curves outward, but what's really important about this midsection of the front of the building are the metal rails that he uses to adorn these large bays of windows that introduce a lot of light into the interior of the building. And this light filters down into spaces that flow throughout the building through a sort of excessive use of curves. And these intricate organic designs are made using glass and iron construction, which kind of made these designs possible as opposed to, more traditional construction using maybe stone or wood. But this sort of, excess of detail and kind of gilding in a way of the interior is a reflection of the patron's wealth. And this is a little bit different than how Green and Green handle their work. Brothers Charles and Henry Green were most notable for their work in California, and they adored craft, using the arts and crafts style to utilize native materials in their architecture. And there's much less excess decoration than what we see in Victor Horta's work, simply because there's more of an emphasis on the materials being used rather than what can be brought into a space. And some of their inspiration stems from the woodwork of Japanese architecture, as can be seen in the Gamble House, which has a very simple shingled exterior with wooden frames around the windows and doors to add a sort of contrast in color. The Japanese influence I was talking about can be seen in the balcony and the tiered roof. And I'll pass around some models of the three buildings I'm speaking of. You can see a closer view of how the structure of the balcony is made. There really isn't a lot of frivolous ornamentation on this building except for the exception of stained glass doors, which introduced some subtle, imitative organic designs into this architecture. But really overall this organic idea is pursued in a different context, because the organic properties of the materials being used are really focused on, rather than imitating organic forms such as with Victor Horta and his use of metal. And the inside of the Gamble House is still predominantly wooden. The pegs and straps serve, both as function and decor. They both hold the building together and add a sense of detail and the furniture was made in a similar manner so that it would match the interior of the building. So there wasn't a lot of external forces being, brought in to interrupt the space. The stained glass features introduced to the doors are also introduced to light fixtures on the inside, which kind of bring a warm light to the interior of the space. And these first two buildings are very different from what Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon tried to accomplish in New York. They began their firm first as Shreve and Lamb, and then later Harmon joined them, and they pursued design from a very commercial point of view using the Art Deco style, which was very geometric and abstract compared to organic sources of inspiration. And the simplified design gave them a sort of ease of construction that allowed them to create large scale architecture such as skyscrapers like the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building has very little excessive decoration, especially compared to the last two buildings, and other than geometric form, the exterior design is extremely simple. There wasn't really a lot of necessity for, excessive detail because people simply went beyond the eye level to appreciate that detail throughout the sides of the building. The entrance and spires show the most attention to detail because that's what people would be drawn to the most and would see most often. And the Art Deco really emphasized this streamlined architecture and geometrical focus as seen in the overall structure of the building. And the lobby is really an extension of these ideas. Even though it carries more detail, it's a strategic location of contrast. You walk in and the interior is just as rigid and professional as the exterior suggests. And although there are more geometric motifs, there's this introduction of color, which really just emphasizes the building's impact on the people who are interacting with it, because it's still a very, large and imposing space to enter. And how these buildings compare is Horta and the Green Brothers obviously focused on very organic forms of decoration as opposed to the abstract shape-based decoration Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon brought to their skyscraper. Horta and the Green Brothers used different materials and ideals, but they ended up with kind of similar aesthetics in the end. And although Horta used modern materials similar to what was used in the Empire State Building, the Empire State Building had a focus on speedy construction and, industry. The Hotel Tassel and Gamble House were more personal spaces. They were, private homes of the people who commissioned these architects, as opposed to Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon's commercial purpose for the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building had a focus on function over intricacy because it was meant to house a very large number of people who were conducting business as opposed to a setting, where decoration could really define the personal aesthetic of the people who lived inside. So in conclusion, decoration plays a very important role in the emotions that people attach to a setting, simply because of the variety of forms that decoration can take. And even architects of opposing ideals can share similarities in these designs. And really, a lack of decoration can have just as much impact as the inclusion of decoration, as can be seen in the Empire State Building, where it takes a more professional turn to a personalized setting, or rather than a personalized setting. In any case, that's all I have for you. Thank you for listening.